get into the world. I mean, it all happened over lunchtime, from the time my wife started feeling labour pains to the time that he was born.
My father was a priest. He was a curate in Leeds and then in Northamptonshire, where I was born, and then he became a vicar. And he was the vicar of the Isle of Dogs, and then he was a vicar in Mill Hill in North London.
Hugh himself, I think, is a very stable person, and that must partly be because of the sort of family that he was brought up in.
You know, I had a very happy childhood. And one of the factors in that, I think, was that my father, both my parents, were around all the time.
There were difficulties, there always are, I think, for clergy children. Vicar's son, he shouldn't be doing that, you know. It's quite different from other children.
It can be difficult. I mean, you know, I know from other clergy children, you get this terrible, go and swear, go and say rude words, can tell your dad.
They went to church, that was the expectation in the family that they should, but we didn't actually ever push that. I think that there were probably a lot of quiet, subtle expectations on them both, which they might not even have recognised.
I don't remember being forced to go to church. But I quite enjoyed it. It was a sort of social thing, wasn't it? Get a cup of coffee afterwards.
We decided that we would want him to go to the school his brother was at, which was Haberdashers' Asks at Elstree. It was a good school. And, bless me, poor old Hugh didn't pass the entrance exam, which was a bit of a shock to him and a bit of a shock to us, really.
I was sent to a school called UCS in North London. So that was kind of strange, you know, sort of being a vicar's son in an atheist and largely Jewish school, really.
It cost money, of course. It cost more money than Haberdashers would have done, because it's a totally independent school. And we had to, being a parson with not about 2 pennies to rub together, we had to look around for charity. There are charitable funds that will help clergy.
Well, in order to pay the school fees, I think we didn't go on holiday. Really. I think that's why we, caravanned a lot. And there's also a system. It's quite a common way for clergy families and clergymen to have holidays is to borrow each other's vicarages. So we did a lot of that.
They made me a bishop when Hugh was 17. He was just coming up to his final year at UCS. He was going to be captain of the school, he was going to be captain of this and captain of that. It was his opportunity to get good A-levels and get into university. So we decided, his mother and I, that we couldn't have possibly, we had to find some way of making sure that he stayed there.
So my dad went off to Ripon, and I lived with my mum for a year in a flat in Swiss Cottage, which was a sort of interesting time, because it was the first time I'd sort of been deprived of the whole sort of family backup.
That was when, for me, he left home, because I left him in a way, and he went on in this basement flat in Swiss Cottage.
I didn't do, that well at A-level, and I was very lucky, really, to get in to Cambridge. But I think because everyone in the immediate family had been to Cambridge, I started to think of Cambridge as a university rather than as a university.
Cambridge isn't important, we said, but I know that that's not what they thought we were saying.
I think they were keen that I get a degree, like a lot of parents, because they realised that it was a sort of a passport, to be able to do what you wanted to do. I'd only really done comedy for the last year at university when I met Steve Punt, and I'd done it, and but I just thought, this is quite fun, but I never really considered doing it properly. I got a job before I left university in marketing, and by then we'd started doing Jasper Carrot, which I did on Saturdays, did it live on Saturdays, which was fine. I had to ask my boss if I could do it, and he said he thought that would be fine. So I turned up on BBC One on Saturday nights and then at the office on Monday morning. But after 4 years I've had enough, and so I decided, to to do what I do now.
They're all very pleased to have a bishop who had a son who was a comedian. But the bishop was pleased to have a son who was a comedian as well. So perhaps that came through.
I think I just did it. And only became aware afterwards of how worried they'd been. You know, leaving, reasonably well-paid job with good prospects for, performing at the Comedy Store. You know, if you have parents who've been happily married for 40 years or whatever, there is something to live up to.
Hugh's first marriage failed. I think probably it was a mistake from the start. They were schools, they're not around in the sixth form together. And they drifted apart somehow. Hugh was terribly cut up about it. He really was terribly hurt that she'd left him.
It had never happened in our family. So I think it was quite difficult for them. And they were amazingly supportive. And again, I think the reason that I talk to my parents a lot more now than I did, immediately after university and all that, is probably because of that experience, actually. Because it was, it kind of doesn't matter how old your children are, you're always their parents. And it also doesn't matter how old you are. You're always, so far I have found that I always turn to my parents. And I got to know them far better because of that and through that experience.
We did quite a lot of mopping up at one stage. We would come home for weekends and talk on the phone and so forth. Well, that's what parents are for, I suppose, amongst other things. And Kate, his present wife, she had a lot to carry because he was still getting over the loss of his first wife when he met her. So I married them. I took the blessing service for them. Since then I've baptised Freddie. And it's an enormous joy to do that.
Fred is now 22 weeks old, but, I thought it was tremendous urge to go and open a national savings account the day after he was born. It just changes your perspective.
I don't think the relationship with Hugh has changed by the fact that he's got a little boy. It's expanded the dimensions, really. Now there's Freddie whom we can share. I don't know whether Hugh will be looking to me for any tips about fathering. I suspect that he and Kate will work it out for themselves.
I suppose I am basing the way I'm treating Fred on the way that I was treated.
By their fruits you shall know them, something that Christ once said. And I think that's true in a way. Hugh he's a good guy. He and I are very fond of each other. We're not dependent on each other.
We've always had a kind of quite sort of matey relationship for me. But you're sort of aware that the sort of bit there's not a very long period between your parents looking after you and you looking after your parents.